The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but Eirik's words were clear. It started with the howling. Winter had come hard to the north, colder than any had seen before. The fjords had frozen at their edges, the long ships trapped in ice. The air itself felt cursed, thick with a silence that gnawed at the bones. The men were restless, huddled in their cloaks, waiting for the gods to grant them fairer skies. But the gods had turned away. That was when they heard it. A sound rolling through the fjords. Not wind, not wolves. Something deeper, something wrong. The villagers did not speak of it. They only shut their doors, barred their halls, and whispered prayers to gods who would not answer. By morning, one of the hunters was missing. There was no blood, no tracks leading away, just the sound of howling, still echoing from the cliffs above. And when Eirik looked up at the frozen ridge, he swore he saw something. A figure, standing on two legs, watching. And then it was gone. The missing hunter's name was Sten. He was a seasoned tracker, a man who could read the forest like the lines on his palm. And yet, when they found him, he had been lost like a child in the dark. Eirik and the others followed the only clue they had, a single set of footprints leading toward the high ridge. No tracks returned. They climbed in silence, their breaths fogging the air. The higher they went, the more the world fell away, swallowed by the cold. Then they saw it. Sten, standing there, frozen solid. His eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if caught mid-breath. Frost clung to his beard, his lashes. He had no wounds, no signs of struggle. But the look on his face, that was the worst of all. It wasn't fear, it wasn't pain, it was awe. As if in his final moments, he had seen something so immense, so terrible, that his mind had shattered before death could take him. And then, the howling. Louder this time, closer. The men flinched, gripping their weapons. But Eirik only listened. There was something about the sound that stirred in his chest, like a voice he almost understood. One of the men dropped his axe.
"We should not be here,"
he muttered. But Eirik stepped closer. That was when he saw them. The second set of footprints, leading away into the snow. They did not belong to Sten. They were larger, heavier, spaced farther apart, too far for any man to walk. And they did not sink deep into the snow, as if whatever made them was lighter than it should have been. The wind howled through the fjord, but Eirik barely noticed. He was staring at the tracks. They did not curve. They did not wander. They led straight toward the tree line, and they ended there. No sign of a body, no sign of struggle. As if whoever or whatever had been standing there had simply vanished. Behind him, one of the warriors swore under his breath. Another gripped his axe tighter. The fear was settling in now, thick as the cold. Then, the wind shifted, and Eirik felt it, felt them. He turned his head slowly, toward the trees. For a moment, there was nothing, just darkness. And then, a pair of golden eyes opened, then another and another. They did not blink, they did not move, they only watched. And then the howling began again, not from the cliffs, from within the forest, closer than before.
"We need to leave."
The warrior beside Eirik stepped back, voice shaking.
"Now."
But Eirik did not move, because the howls, they did not sound like warnings. They sounded like a call, and deep in his chest, where the cold had not yet touched, something in him wanted to answer. The warriors did not run, not yet, but they wanted to. Eirik could hear their breath quicken, could feel the tension in the air. The howls had shifted something inside them, inside all of them. A voice finally broke the silence.
"It's just wolves."
The youngest of them, Gunnar, barely whispered the words. But he did not believe them. Neither did Eirik, because no wolf walked like a man. And the footprints leading away from Sten's body were no longer alone. More had joined them. The eyes in the dark blinked. One pair disappeared, then another, and then they moved, silent, shifting between the trees without sound. And then the wind carried something new, a voice, not howling, whispering.
You should not have come.
The warriors stiffened. Eirik gripped his axe tighter. The whisper had not come from the trees. It had come from behind them, inside the village. The howling was no longer outside the walls. It was inside. The village should have been safe. The gates were bolted. The longhouse was sealed. Nothing had entered. And yet, the howling was inside. A scream tore through the night. Not from the forest, not from the cliffs, from within the longhouse. The warriors moved as one, racing toward the sound, boots pounding against the frozen ground. Eirik was the first to reach the doors, heavy wooden slabs reinforced with iron. They had not been forced open. They had been unlatched from the inside. That was impossible. But the blood smeared across the threshold did not lie.
Gunnar, get the torches.
Someone barked. Flames flickered to life, casting shadows that danced along the walls. Then they saw them. 2 men slumped against the far wall, their throats torn open, blood pooling beneath their bodies. And a third, still breathing, still alive, barely. It was Halldor, one of the village's best fighters. He sat hunched near the fire, his hands clutching his stomach. His skin was slick with sweat, his breath ragged. Something was wrong.
Halldor.
Eirik stepped closer, but he did not answer. Then his shoulders twitched. A single unnatural spasm that sent his body jerking upright. The warriors froze. His fingers curled inward, clawing at the ground. His breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. His back arched, bones cracked. Then, finally, he looked up, and his eyes burned gold. Halldor's breath hitched, his chest rising and falling in uneven jerks. His fingers scraped against the wooden floor, nails blackening, thickening. Something inside him was breaking, or becoming.
Halldor?
Eirik's voice was steady, but his grip on the axe tightened. The warriors stood frozen, watching. None of them dared to move. Halldor's head tilted sharply, as if he were listening to something none of them could hear. Then, his jaw cracked. It unhinged, widening too far, a wet, sickening sound filling the silence. He let out a breath, but it was not a breath. It was a growl.
Gods,
one of the warriors whispered. Then Halldor moved, not like a man, like a predator. A blur of movement, faster than any human should be. He lunged. The nearest warrior raised his shield. Too slow. Halldor's claws ripped through wood, through flesh, sending the man crashing backward. Screams erupted. Axes swung. Steel met flesh, but it was not enough. The thing that had once been Halldor was not a man anymore. And then, the door flung open. The wind howled, and something answered. Beyond the firelight, just at the village's edge, more golden eyes burned in the dark. The pack had come home. The pack did not attack, not yet. They only watched, waiting. Their golden eyes flickered in the torchlight, their breath rising in misty plumes. More than a dozen, maybe more. The warriors inside the longhouse staggered back, but Eirik couldn't move. The change was still happening. Halldor, or what had been Halldor, jerked and twitched, his body convulsing. His bones snapped and reformed beneath his skin, muscles stretching unnaturally. The sound of it, wet and tearing, like flesh unraveling. And yet, he was smiling. A grin too wide, too full of teeth.
What are you?
One of the warriors whispered. Haldor laughed, a rasping, growling sound that did not belong in a man's throat.
What I was meant to be.
Then he turned to the open door. The wind shifted, and something moved. Not the warriors, not the pack, something else, a presence, heavy, ancient, patient. And then, the Alpha stepped forward. It was larger than the others, broader, standing taller than any man. Its fur black as the void, its limbs long and sinewy, and its eyes, burning, golden, endless. It did not snarl, it did not charge. It simply looked at Eirik, as if it had always been looking. It whispered. The word wasn't spoken. It was felt, deep in Eirik's bones. And for the first time since the howling began, he felt the pull of the hunt. The word pulsed through Eirik's bones, and yet Skull's mouth never moved. The pack did not lunge. They did not need to. They were waiting, because this was not a battle. It was a choice. Haldor, the thing that had once been Haldor, dropped to one knee before Skull. Head bowed, submissive, no hesitation, no fear. He had chosen. And Eirik, his breath came slow, uneven. The howls did not sound foreign anymore. They sounded familiar. Something deep in his blood, in his marrow, in his soul. It stirred. It knew. A cold realization settled in his gut. This was never about hunting them. It was about claiming one of them. And the pack had already decided.
You were not prey.
Skull whispered.
You were never prey.
The warriors behind Eirik shifted, gripping their weapons tighter. They did not see it, did not feel it. They were still clinging to the world of men. But Eirik, he was already standing at the threshold of something else. And the worst part? He wanted to cross it. The pack did not move, neither did Eirik. But something inside him did. The howls no longer sounded distant. They were in his bones.
You were never prey.
Skull whispered again, but this time, Eirik felt the words. They curled around his mind, his soul, a command, a promise, a claim. Behind him, the warriors were backing away now. They saw it too. Not the pack, him.
Eirik, step away.
One of them muttered, voice shaking.
Come with us.
He turned his head slightly, and for a brief moment, he almost did. Almost. But Skull saw it. The hesitation, the choice. And so, Skull acted, a blur of movement, faster than the eye could follow. Pain, white-hot and searing, sinking into Eirik's shoulder, claws, digging, marking. The warriors ran. They did not fight, did not wait. They fled into the dark. But Eirik, he stayed, because Skull had marked him, and there was no going back. Eirik fell to his knees. His breath came in ragged gasps, his vision swimming. The wound burned, not like fire, but like something burrowing deeper than flesh, something taking root. The howls no longer came from the pack. They came from inside him. Skull loomed over him, golden eyes glowing like embers. The Alpha had made its choice.
You are ours now.
The voice slithered through his mind. Not a threat, a truth. The others had fled. The warriors, the men who had once stood at his side. He could hear them, panting, stumbling through the snow, desperate to reach the fjord. But no one had chased them. The pack did not need to, because they had already won.
Run if you must.
Skull murmured.
It will not matter. You will hear us again. The night already knows your name.
And Eirik, he did what no warrior should. He turned his back on the pack, and he ran. The cold burned his lungs, his legs shaking beneath him. Every step was agony, but he kept going. He ran until the trees thinned, until the ground sloped downward, until the frozen fjords stretched before him. And only then, only when the wind howled through the cliffs, did he dare to look back. The pack was gone, but the howls, they still echoed, and deep in his chest, beneath the wound, beneath his skin, he could still feel them, waiting. The fjord stretched before him, a vast, frozen wasteland beneath the pale glow of the moon. The longships sat in the ice, unmoving, their sails stiff with frost. But Eirik did not stop running, not until his boots hit the frozen shore, not until the village was far behind, not until the howls became whispers. Only then did he collapse to his knees, his breath rising in ragged clouds. The warriors who had escaped with him, those who had not been taken, not been marked, stood in stunned silence. None of them spoke. None of them looked at him. Because they had seen. They had seen what Skoll had done, what Eirik had allowed. His fingers brushed his shoulder, where the alpha had left its mark. The wound was not deep. The flesh had already begun to knit itself closed, but it was still there. It would always be there.
He let you go.
One of the warriors finally muttered, not a question, a realization. Eirik swallowed hard. His throat was dry. He did not answer, because he did not know if he had truly been let go at all. The wind picked up, a sharp, howling gust rolling over the fjord. It should have been just the wind, but Eirik heard it. A voice. His hands clenched into fists. He did not look back. He did not need to. The night had already claimed him. They left the fjord at dawn. No one spoke of what had happened, not of the warriors who had been lost, not of the thing that had once been Haldor, not of the mark that now burned beneath Eirik's skin. They sailed when the ice broke, silent as the dead. But the howls never stopped. Not truly. They did not come from the cliffs anymore, not from the woods. They came from within him. It started small, a twitch in his fingers when the moon was high, a whisper in the back of his mind, just beneath the edge of thought, the feeling of being watched, even when he was alone, especially when he was alone. The others felt it too. They did not speak to him like they once had, did not sit beside him by the fire. They did not have to say it. They feared him. They should. Because Eirik feared himself. He had left the pack behind, but they had never left him. Nights became the worst of it. Eirik could ignore it during the day. The whispers, the pull of the hunt, the way his senses had sharpened in ways no man's should. But when the sun dipped beneath the horizon, he heard them. Not just the howls, the voices. Soft at first, like wind through the trees. Then louder, clearer, calling.
You are not lost. You are only waiting.
His fingers curled tighter around his axe, knuckles white. Some nights, he fought it. Other nights, he almost answered. And that was what terrified him the most. The men still followed him, but they did not trust him. Not anymore. The ones who had seen what happened in the village, those who had fled with him from the fjord, never spoke of it aloud, but they did not sleep when Eirik kept watch. And when they looked at him, it was with the same expression he had once seen in dying men. A waiting thing, like they knew the battle had not yet begun, like they knew he had already lost. One night, he woke to a knife at his throat, not an enemy's, one of his own men, a warrior he had fought beside for years.
I cannot do this.
The man whispered. His hand shook.
I cannot wait for the night's return.
Eirik stared at him, silent, still, because he understood. He might have done the same. He did not try to stop the blade, did not beg, did not fight. He only waited. And when the man's hand finally fell away, his shoulders slumping in defeat, Eirik heard the howling again. Closer than ever, the knife never struck, but it didn't have to. The warrior, the man who had fought beside Eirik for years, who had once trusted him without question, lowered his blade with shaking hands. His eyes said what his lips could not. He knew that Eirik was no longer the same man who had sailed with them, knew that he should have ended it while he still had the chance. But instead, he did something worse. He turned and walked away, and by morning, he was gone. They never spoke of him. No one asked where he had gone. No one searched, because they all understood. They were waiting for their own turn to leave, one by one. Until one night, Eirik woke and realized there was no one left. He had not heard them go, had not smelled the fire die, had not listened for the sound of retreating footsteps, because he had been listening to something else. The howls. The wind carried them low and steady, curling around him like a whisper in the dark.
You are alone now. Come home.
His fingers ached to grip his axe, to fight something, anything. But there was no enemy left, only him, and the voices that had never stopped calling. The fire had burned low, the wind had stilled, and Eirik was alone. Not alone like a man who had lost his crew, not alone like a warrior left behind after battle. This was something else, something waiting, something watching. He sat there for a long time, staring into the embers. His hands had steadied. His breath came slow, measured, because he already knew what would come next. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon.
You will return to us.
Skoll had said. Not a threat, not a promise, a certainty. And Eirik had spent his whole life defying certainty. He rose slowly, stretching out his limbs, feeling the ache of something more than exhaustion. The wound on his shoulder, the mark of the Alpha, was no longer fresh. But it was still there. It would always be there. The warriors who had left him had been afraid of what he might become. But Eirik, he was afraid of what he already was. The night was silent, no wind, no shifting trees. But still, when Eirik lifted his head, he heard it. A howl, distant, familiar, waiting. And deep in his chest, where the cold had never touched, where the fire had never truly burned, something in him howled back. The howl faded into the night, but it had never truly left. It lived in the space between his breaths, in the silence before sleep, in the hollow ache of something half-remembered, something waiting, something patient. A curse does not need to take you all at once. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it follows. And Eirik knew, deep in his marrow, that no matter how far he ran, no matter how many years passed, the hunt was not over. Not yet. Not for him. The fire in his camp had turned to embers, flickering red against the dark. He stood, feeling the weight in his limbs, the shift in his bones that had never truly left since that night in the fjords. And for the first time, he spoke aloud. His voice was hoarse, rough from disuse.
I will not return to you.
The words hung in the cold air, met only with silence. But deep in the trees, beyond the reach of the firelight, golden eyes watched. And somewhere in the distance, a howl rose once more, not calling him, waiting for him to call back. But as the night stretched on and the embers dimmed, Eirik stared into the dark and whispered,
Not yet.
Some things do not end. Some hunts never truly stop. If this story left you with a lingering chill, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next lost tale from Eirik's journal. And tell me, if you heard the howls in the night, would you run or would you listen? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching Cabin of Whispers. See you next time.